CD, JK, and what it is now. The gearbox from the brand new Z, the RZ34. What is the designation? Stay tuned and we'll find that out. First, we would like to go and take some time and thank some guys back here. We got Dimitri and we got Steve. These guys are some local drifters that has been through a tranny or two. I don't know why they giggle. Like they're like school kids. I don't know. So these guys been swapping some trannies around with some different engines. There's some local American grassroots drifters. I asked them to come help me out today because right now we're going to do a quick overview on the CD and the brand new RZ34 tranny. We have the JK in there for just some filler information. We all know that the CD right now is the most popular, affordable gearbox on the import scene and the domestic scene. A lot of people swap those into so many cars. There's so many kits. There are kits that bolt on to the CD bolt spacing, and then the adapter bolts on to whatever block you're putting on. There's some companies that actually make entire bell housing. You take a saws off this bell housing, you take off the front cover, you bolt on the new bell housing that has the front cover integrated into it, and Bob's your uncle, bolt it onto whatever block you want. Super affordable, super popular, CD009. Can the new RZ34 trump the old school CD009? The reason why I'm asking this, the CD009 came in the DE350Z, the Z33. That car factory was about 275 horsepower. Nissan spec'd this transmission to run reliably for many years on that platform. Lo and behold, some crazy grassroots people just slapped that bad boy on some high horsepower cars and it held. Now, the higher the horsepower, they will have some synchro issues and stuff, the older the age. But the thing that's really great about the CDs is that they're so cheap that you just buy it brand new. They're cheap, they're readily available, and they're very popular.
Cheap, ready, available trannies in your area, you know?
Yeah.
See?
Trannies for you.
There you go. Don't need to go to Thailand. Just go down to your local Nissan dealer. Let's go ahead and let's kind of, just a quick overview of physical differences. We'll talk a few little small measurements. This is not a super in-depth. This is just, I want to introduce this transmission to the greater audience, and maybe we could find out or just get it out there and see eventually if it could replace the CD009. So we all know and we all love the CD because it's an external slave. We don't have to worry about oiling down our clutch or also heat soaking our slave. The JK, one of the big problems with the JK is that's an internal slave. And it's plastic. They kind of failed prematurely around 30,000 miles, 40,000 miles. They have a metal HD slave, which is aluminum and stuff, but still heat soaks and people lose pedal feel and stuff like that. With the RZ34, they went back to an external slave. So you can see here the throttle bearing, you can see the fork, and there's no slave on there, but it's external, which is a really cool thing, right? Throughout the different generations, we've noticed it's just update after update after update. Pretty much the different generation also was built to handle more horsepower. The 350 was around 275. The JK was around 340.
300, 340. Yeah, I think the big thing that most people just think all Z transmissions are the same, but the reality is the HR transmission is totally different. It's the same as the Z34 versus Z33. You see that a lot of times, like DE guys will be like, oh, I just need a, or HR guys will be like, oh, I need a CD, but it's actually a totally different transmission.
Yeah, another weird thing is that the JK has a CD stamp on it. So if you look over here, CD009 has a CD stamp on the casing. The JK over here also has a CD stamp on the casing. So pretty much there may be, all these are just like say updates. The bell housing is different. The main case housing is pretty much very, very close. The rear housing is kind of similar too, and I guess the different generations, they do have different stamps. So, but they're all like the rear housing part here all says CD. That says CD4, this says CD4, and that's CD8.
Yeah, a lot of times, like on the original CDs, like it's 0 through 9, but the 9 is not actually stamped on the case. Even on the, that's a OA, I think is the last name.
OA is the current one, yeah.
So that is an updated CD, so to speak.
Yeah, it's
the
actually a
latest one.
CD0A, CD000.
Which is the one you could buy today.
Other things we're looking at is on the top of here, you would see CD, the old DE cars back then, Rev Match or Synchro Rev, whatever you call it, just wasn't an option. That came out with the Z34. So the top here is blank. This most likely was a, what you call it, a HR car, so like a G35 or a 2007, 2008
Z350.
Z with HR. So there's no Synchro Match module. But on this RZ34, here is the Synchro Match module, so that's kind of cool to see.
Yeah, the sensor top is a little different on the HRs. I think it's all black, but it looks very similar, so it's the easiest way to identify them for sure.
The tree is also different, the shifter tree. Of course, the interior might be different, so the shifter positioning might be higher and further back, so the tree is a little different. Off camera, Steve grabbed my shaft. So, yeah, so off camera, Steve grabbed my shaft. It's a nice little dark colored one over there.
It's carbon.
Yeah, and we did verify that the outputs for that input are all the same across the generations.
Yeah.
So that's one cool thing. So maybe on the new RZ34, regular Z34 shafts are interchangeable. I don't know if anybody's tried that yet or if it's common knowledge or anything yet.
Yeah, it'll depend a little bit on the diff too, because I know the diff got updated, right? So whatever the nose difference is on the new diff, that'll probably determine your drive shaft length, because the diffs are different.
Yeah, if there's a snout difference on the diff,
Yeah.
that could dictate, but
if you're
the chassis and everything's the same, so it should be really close.
So if you're doing this for a swap, it's going to be the same piece. So a lot of times if you're doing a swap, you're either going to get a custom one made or you're going to cut down an existing. So you could cut down basically any CG drive shaft and make it work, which is cool.
We did do some loose measurements. Now this is nothing to spec. The input shaft transmission is about 5 millimeters longer versus the CD.
Splines are the same though.
Splines are the same, yeah, 24 spline. The bell housing is definitely different between them. So you'll have to get like an adapter or the bell housing swap. I just don't know if you take a look here, if this cover, it looks really similar to the CD009 cover, but I don't know if these bolt patterns, if these bolt holes actually line up. So that's something that you have to actually scrap them to see.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't want to scrap this right now.
And you could run into a difference with the front cover bearings as well, being different diameter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the difference between the CD and the JK. Is these look extremely similar, but you can see this emboss right here. There's a bearing right here. This bearing was different, and then the bearing surrounding the input shaft was also different. So that's something to take a look at if somebody does a tear down on one of these transmissions, to see how that could differ between the three of them.
And if you're doing swaps, you mentioned the two earlier where you either use the adapter plate up front. Usually those are drilled, so you either work with a CD or a JK, and this should fall kind of in that same range. But if it's a half cut bell housing, like you see on a lot of LS swaps or JZ swaps, that front cover difference does come into play for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sensors look almost similar, except I don't know what this sensor is.
Yeah,
JK
this is
has
the
an
only one
extra
that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know what the purpose of that one is, but it does have an extra one.
Yeah,
So
'cause-
the neutral position and the reverse look like they're the same,
yeah.
at least in terms of how the pinouts and everything are and the coloration across all three. But that one, we actually don't know what that is.
Yeah. So you see these blue sensors across the thing here? We're believing that those blue sensors are reverse. Then neutral position on this side here, similar. Right there. But there's this extra plug here. So you may just have to do some internet sleuthing to figure out what that is. That's the slave on the JK. That's the RZ34 trans. And there's the old CD. Crank sensor opening. So it's there on the JK. It's up here on the RZ. And it's down here on the CD.
Which, if you're doing a swap, definitely important. Dimitri just ran into this with the 240. You get into where the sensor or the starter location is relative to your steering shaft, and it's a
Yeah, depending on the bell housing style for the swap, like the swap hardware, this is a big issue on S chassis swaps, putting VQs in S chassis where on the JK and the HRs and the VHRs, the starter's on the same side as the drive shaft now from a DE setup, and you get a lot of interference between the steering column, gear housing, and the starter.
You have to massage the tunnel because these are much wider gearboxes versus what came on a S chassis, right?
Some people do, depending on the motor positioning matters a lot. So if you've pushed the motor back really far, yeah, you'll have to open up the trans tunnel to accommodate for the larger bell housing. But like for my swap, for example, I didn't have to do any of that because of where my motor's mounted at.
Really, I'm going to put this on your RZ34 trans in the 510. I just don't know if I want to chance cutting it because MassWorks hasn't verified that the bell housing will work on this transmission. So I don't know if I want to go ahead and cut it and then it not work, have to make the bell housing work, or if I should just go do the adapter. I know in Japan, there's a guy that modified SR adapter, a CD009 SR adapter for the RZ34. Some dowel pins locations were different. The sensor were different, so he did have to do some minor changes. But he was successful in getting this brand new gearbox on SR, which is cool. So it's swappable. We just got to figure it out. In terms of generation and strength and revision, that's the OG, although it has been revised. There's been some model changes to it. The JK RZ34 had probably like 75, 100 more horsepower, so it had to be stronger. But internal slave, I think really internal slave is what made it not... Oh, you were telling me that... So a lot of people say that the CD and the JK are exactly the same except for the slave, but it's not true.
Yeah, the front input bearings are different. They're different sizes, right? So like I was mentioning before, if you do the half cuts on the bell housings where you cut at about this line, you take it all the way down to here, and then you use the bolts for that front cover to bolt on a new cover. And whether that's like a VK swap or LS or JZ, which is way more common, you're still going to use those same bolts, which is why that front cover is so important. So if those bearings are different, it can kind of create some issues if you're trying to use a CD front cover on a JK or what is the name of this one? This is a GP?
So, as you bring that up, we all know CD, we all know JK. This designation is a 6GP. So we're no longer in a dual character designation, we're in a 3-character designation. Now, I'm not too sure, like the stamp says it's a CD009 and this really is just a JK. Should just be just a 6GP. Oddly enough, Z1 has these for sale.
Oh, already?
They have them listed on their website with the synchro module and without the synchro module.
Is that probably for Infinity guys to be able to do a
Maybe.
manual swap?
But guess the other kicker. It's $200 cheaper than the CD009 on their
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
That might be supply and demand on that one.
Yeah.
That's
So
pretty
check
crazy.
that out. You can buy this brand new from Z1 cheaper than a brand new CD009. So have at it, guys. Get out there. buy these transmissions. I want to see what the community is doing with it. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, stronger internals. The fact that you get to retain an external slave, which is so key for swaps, it just makes the hydraulic plumbing much easier. Makes it so if you need to service something, you don't have to take off the whole transmission to do so. Definitely a game changer for sure.
Yeah. So this car, what was the new RZ come factory horsepower? Almost 400?
400 crank.
400 crank. So in terms of, like we said, this started 275 and it could hold around close to 1,000. This not necessarily used because of external slave and stuff, so we can't really see what people have done with this. There's some boosted VQs out there with the same trans that holds 600 to 800 fine.
Yeah.
This is made for a turbo car, 400 horsepower. The word is that they did a stronger, longer first and second gear because of the turbo car and because how the turbo car reacts. So who knows? We really need to see what the community comes up with in terms of swapping both transmissions and seeing what they come out with. But in all retrospect, all aspects, this should be the best option now.
Yeah, I mean the guys that are able to use this gear position sensor and add the Synco rev mesh on swaps, that's gonna be cool for sure.
So he touched on that. When I go drive by on the 510, I'm gonna try to wire this up and see if I can get Synco rev. I do heel toe on the G, very novicely, but it'll be really cool if I could get this running the 510 with a push of a button. If I'm doing like HPDs or little
Drift days?
No, I don't know what drift days. But the cone days, autocross.
Yeah.
Throw on the rev match and autocross days, whatever and stuff. That'd be really cool.
I mean, honestly, just even driving around, it's a cool feature to have for sure, especially if you're on a Haltech or a nice standalone like that where you can set that up.
Definitely on an on-off switch.
Heads up, you're at 15 minutes.
So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. That's pretty much a big comparison between some of the Nissan gearboxes across the generations. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen with the new 6GP transmission compared to the CD009. We'll see if the industry switches over, or we'll see if the CD009 remains the king of the Nissan trannies, king of the affordable gearbox swap. So please, if this content was very beneficial for you, if you learned something new, if it was just entertaining, please go ahead, hit that sub, hit that like, share the video. Let's get this information out there and let's see what some of the other manufacturers are able to do with this. I would love to see the new RZ34 transmission, the 6GP transmission, gets more widely adopted among some swaps. But also, stay tuned for that swap going into my SR20 Haltech tuned 510.